Hello, I'm Rick Hurtless, founder of His Gospel Power. Thank you for joining with our program. Once again, as we look into the book of Daniel, chapter 1, we're on verse 3. Thank you so much to those who have joined us. Please go to hisgospelpower.org, click on the donate button or the contact us button. It is our pleasure to receive your gift and to receive your prayer support as you partner with us and we spread the gospel of Jesus around the world. Okay, so we've looked at the last couple of days. We're looking at the beginning of Daniel, and we're kind of getting the introduction here, discovering a little bit of the character of Daniel, and discovering how God is using this book to set up the second coming of Jesus Christ. We talked about Nimrod yesterday, and the fact that Nimrod basically represents all of the evil in the world, other than Satan. In fact, more than likely he was indwelled by Satan. He was definitely an Antichrist, no doubt about it. He was not the Antichrist, or was he? Perhaps, even as Ron was talking about yesterday, perhaps through technology and through all these things that are going on, perhaps he is the Antichrist that will actually be the clone. Don't forget, the Bible talks about that God granted the Antichrist the power to the image of the beast, to give, the power of the Antichrist to bring life to the image of the beast. So that's a whole nother can of worms. So we are now, all kinds of things could be stirred from that. But the bottom line is, as we enter into the last days, we've got to keep our focus on the second coming of Jesus Christ by spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's how we keep our eyes on the second coming, is spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, bring as many as we can to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Well, let's look at verse 3 and verse 4, basically, and we've already read that the first day, but what we're seeing is that all of these men, these young men that were brought to the kingdom and to the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, they were all no blemish. These were young men that they searched far and wide. They wanted beautiful men, good-looking men, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge. These were not just all a bunch of ragtags that they went out and grabbed. They got the finest looking and acting men in the kingdom, and they brought them in. And still, God rose up Daniel, and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or as they were called by Nebuchadnezzar, Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And of course, those Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego probably rings a bell, and we will get into that later as we look in a little bit more into this. But that probably rings a bell with you as far as them being put into the fire. So that we're going to see that. But it also, what all of this tells us is the character, the spiritual character, the godly character of these men who are not willing, no matter what, to compromise what they are how they are to act with God and how they are to represent God. And I find that as a stark contrast as to what we see in our culture today. There is compromise at every level of the so-called spiritual society, the spiritual elite. There is their empires, if you will, are built on compromise, which at that point makes me wonder. And they're called men of God, but which God? Are they men of Yahweh, or are they men of the flesh, or men of Satan, basically? So that's just, I guess that's a whole nother aspect, but it is something to think about as we look in this book and we see what true men of God are supposed to be, which is uncompromising. That's the entire New Testament. We look at men that are supposed to be uncompromising, and for the most part are. There was exceptions. Peter compromised, and Paul had to rebuke him, which of course Peter subsequently repented and then came back in line like he was supposed to. So we are still men and we still make mistakes. But these men did not compromise. are you compromising today? What does your life look like? What are you compromising about? What is your flesh leading you into that you don't want to give up? Because it will lead to you losing your house or your cars or your your beautiful girl that you got on the side or whatever it is. You losing your status, whatever it is. What are you compromising on that you're thinking you've justified in your mind, saying, "Oh well, that's okay. God's going to He'll forgive this one thing." Because it's not that big a deal. What are you compromising on today? Brother Ron Stoyle.
I thought it was interesting, and I know some people are probably asking, why did their names get changed? And I think it's really interesting if we look at what their names meant on why they would want to change the names from really a spiritual point of view. And if we look at Daniel's name, it means God is my judge. Taking a second here just to bring it up. Hananiah means God has favored. Mishael means who is what God is. And then Azariah means Jehovah has helped. So if you are being taken captive in a foreign land that doesn't believe in God, and you could really say they have their own God, they don't want to be calling people names that basically identify someone else's God. So that, to me, that's really why they changed their name, because you look at what their names mean, and they're all referring to God in some form or fashion. So that is probably, to me, the main aspect on why their names were changed.
And really, I think that it takes it actually a little step further than that, because really you can break it down really more to the flesh, as far as the only one who can name people, who can rename people, is God. And so King Nebuchadnezzar, to exert his power over these men, and said, "You've been named this according to your God. I'm going to rename you according to me, because I'm now your God." That's right. That's basically the thought process going into that. So in some ways, it ties exactly what you're saying, that they know that they're names that uphold Yahweh, uphold their God, but they're also, he's saying, well, now I'm going to exert, I'm your God. Forget this God. And of course, as we go throughout the book, we're going to find out Nebuchadnezzar discovers there really is a God above me. I'm not the God. I'm not. And so that's what's going to unfold as we look more into this book.
Yeah, and then I looked at what their new names meant, and it really is all really referencing Nebuchadnezzar, whether it's appointed by the king or, people can go look it up. But yeah, it's really, he took God out of the picture and replaced it with names right. That referred to him. Yes.
And so that is, it really basically, it's the same thing with throughout the Bible, or throughout, you can just look at just about every man. It's going to lead back to themselves. It's only the true men of God that are trying to point to God and trying to deny themselves. Now, that's what I try to do. I want to be a true man of God. I want to do everything to deny myself and point to God. Am I successful at that? Pretty much 90%, but there's 10% of me. I think I can say now 90%, maybe even 95, I don't know. But there's a percentage of me still that wants to point to me, that I still am working on, allowing God to sanctify me, help me to grow, so that it's still everything I do points to God. Now, I don't think I'm there yet. And maybe these men were not there yet either. Remember, the Bible, God does not really try to exalt men to make them look like they're superhuman. And no, in fact, He brings them down to the level to let us understand that they were not superhuman, that they were just regular men, just like we are, that were trying to follow God. And so that's what, I'm a regular man trying to follow God, and I make mistakes, but I'm still allowing God to lead me more now than I ever have in my life. It's a possibility, as the older I get, I was talking to someone today, as a matter of fact, just this morning, and he was saying that very thing, that look, the older we get, the closer, the less material things mean to us, and the more spiritual things mean. And I think I know that's what's going on in my life. I think that's what goes on in men's life as they get older. Now, not all men. I think that there are some, especially from what I'm seeing on the news and some that I see in politics and all that, they are still all about their material possessions and their wealth and their power. And they are very little about, if at all, about other men and about God. But I think the natural progression of things, or the spiritual, I should say, that's not true. The natural progression of things is probably what's going on with those politicians. The spiritual progression of things should be that now we start focusing more on God and less on all the other things of the world.
Yeah, I think I believe it's where is your end game? What are you looking for that the older you get, the more you realize what's important to achieve that? With those men you were talking about that, still want their midlife crisis sports car and the wife half their age.
Right.
It all comes down to, well, that's what their end game is. They always want the young, cutest, sportiest.
Well, it's all about the pleasures of the flesh.
Right.
And so at that point you can see that they're serving themselves. And in fact, what does the word say? In the last days, men will be lovers of self. And I still find, I've said this before, but I still find it fascinating that one of the most common things people still do is take selfies. And so you put it into that scripture, and it's like one of the most common things about people today is it's about matters of self.
Yeah, I think I saw something on Facebook the other day that said the more that basically people that take selfies on a continuous basis are basically more depressed, and they're using that to overcompensate their depression because they're trying to get attention by doing that.
And that's probably right. I mean, it's a little bit narcissistic, but it's look at me, look at me, look at me. I think I can safely say I don't even know if I've ever taken a selfie. I can't remember taking one. Yeah. So if I did take one, it was only one, and I don't remember it. So it's definitely not a daily occurrence.
I've taken a couple, but most of mine are with my kids, but I don't post those online just so my kids have something to look at with the. And
I guess I did do some videos of something I was studying for a while, which was on the video, which I guess that could be called a selfie because I was using the camera to video myself doing the video, so whatever. But the point is that we are seeing all of these characteristics that led to the destruction of Noah, or not of Noah, but of the earth for Noah's time. We're seeing them play out common time frame each and every day.
Oh yeah, and more, the more we look at what is going on in the world today, we see more and more how it correlates. And I know people are going to criticize us for this, but when you read the Bible about the days of Noah, it's really summarized. You really have to get into other historical documents to see the depth of how bad and how corrupt. And people ask me when they see, oh yeah, well, all flesh had been corrupted, so yeah, and then you ask them a simple question. Okay, if all flesh had been corrupted, can animals sin? And you get that blank look like, well, I never thought of that before. And then you just ask them a simple follow-up question. If animals are corrupt, what can be corrupt about them? Well, I don't know. And then you go, the only thing that could be corrupt about them is their DNA. Because they have no soul, they Okay, some people say they have spirits. Whatever, we'll put.
Well, there is a proverb that talks about the souls of animals, so that's
right.
I used to think, and it's like, well, but then I read that. I used to think, well, animals don't have souls, but then I read that scripture, and it's like, well,
right, but they can't
anyway,
corrupt it
right.
because they don't have
Exactly.
free will, things like that.
Yes,
so
yes.
yeah, okay, I got
they're
it.
absolutely separate from humans.
Right.
We are not. We are not. We are not. We are not. Just another mammal in the food chain, as you've been taught throughout. I remember as a kid, and I never thought anything about it. But now I understand what the deal is. Because now we're not special. We're just another mammal in the food chain. We're just another mammal that evolved to where we're at and blah, 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 blah. And we're not special. But none of it even makes sense. Because if we're just another mammal that evolved, all the other mammals should be gone.
Yeah,
because survival of the fittest, the only thing that should be left is man. There should be absolutely nothing else. It should be gone, wiped out, boom, it's over.
I heard that the other day too. It's like, if evolution worked, it was after I watched the movie Noah again. Because now that I have more biblical knowledge, I wanted to watch it again to see what was right and what was wrong about it. And yeah, they go through creation, and they use evolution through creation.
Right, exactly.
And someone made the joke, they're like, yeah, if evolution worked, why do we still have fish?
Right.
Why do we still have reptiles? Why do we still have birds? If they all evolved out of that, then why are they still here?
Yeah, because they show this chart. Every evolutionist I've ever seen, when you're in school, they have this chart, and it starts with an amoeba or something, and then it goes up to a tadpole, and then to a fish, and then a tadpole, whatever. And it just keeps on showing these different pictures coming up out of the water, and then the lizard turns into a bird, and then a bird turns into whatever. And it's like, it makes no sense. It is absolutely does not make sense. Or why do we have any of this? It should have all stopped. All that should be here is us.
Yeah.
And so that's why I want to make sure that you understand that we're not just another mammal in the evolutionary food chain. We are special. We were made special by God. It says we're the apple of His eye. We are His crowning glory. So we were made special. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. I was just looking at the clock. Just about the time Ron was about to take a breath and add something, it's like,
there's always next week. I'm fine with that.
Week. So thank you so much for joining with us as we have looked into the book of Revelation as our beginning today. We will look into Revelation now for the next several weeks, I imagine. And as we look into the last days and the visions and the prophecies that we will see from Daniel. Thank you so much for joining with us. Please go to hisgospelpower.org, click on the donate button or the contact us button. Until next time, I pray you receive His gospel power today.
He died for you. He died for me. From our sin, He set us free. He loved us so, His life He gave. So if we ask, we can be saved. He's calling you, He's calling you. Jesus Christ is calling you. If He's touched your heart and soul, then come let Jesus make you whole. Come near with me and we will pray that all your sin be washed away.